That takes us to our first speaker of this morning. So now you'll get to hear from Tony Bond. Tony is our Chief Innovation Officer at Great Place to Work. He is the Associate Vice President and Managing Consultant in our organization, and he truly does possess a wealth of experience gained from leadership positions with the Fortune 100 best companies to work for, as well as being a consultant to large and medium-sized organizations. Plus, he's run his own business, so Tony brings a lot of savvy. He brings expertise and passion in the area of strategy formulation and execution, employee engagement, organizational change and learning, business innovation, and leadership development. Tony is a graduate of Case Western Reserve University with a master's degree in positive organizational development and change. Would you please all join me in welcoming Tony Bond to the stage?
Slowly drifting, wave after wave, wave after wave, slowly drifting.
Good morning, everyone. It's exciting to be here, and they give you a lot of instructions before you come out. It's like you get mic'd up. They told me to stay here behind this line, don't cross the line. Also, keep it to 10 minutes. So all these things are swirling in my head. I have to make sure I do that. I'm wondering what happens if I'm at 10 minutes and 1 second and I'm standing over here. I think the floor drops and I'm gone. But it's great to be here. We had a wonderful kickoff yesterday, and I want to just thank our CEO, Michael Bush. What an amazing person he is. So, yeah. Michael's been such a breath of fresh air at a Great Place to Work. You know, we've been doing this work for a long period of time. We got to a place where we needed to figure out what's the next evolution for us as an organization. So he's brought so much leadership to us in that perspective, and we've probably innovated over the last year more so than we've done any year in the history of Great Place to Work. So we're excited to have him on board. We have a lot of great speakers we heard yesterday, and so I want to brag a little bit about something that we're really excited about. Is it okay for us to brag about our Great Place to Work stuff a little? Okay. And so we've been thinking in terms of, you saw yesterday, really our mission, and it's a pretty lofty mission. But if you think in terms of adding the all word to it, it makes it even more aspirational. And so we had to really look inside, and how do we best bring this vision, this mission to life? How do we make an impact for all workers? And we talked about a lot of different workers yesterday. One of the things that one of my colleagues mentioned is that, what about the people with disabilities? You know, we have maybe 17% of the population that are working has some form of disability. So we want to make sure that we're touching everyone. So we have a lofty goal as a Great Place to Work. How do we go about doing that? And so we start to ask ourselves questions. How do we have the greatest impact? We don't want to just be the company that creates an awareness, that brings people together, but we want to be the catalyst around change. And so raise your hand if you had a chance to go to our booth with consultants and kind of hear about the work that we're doing. Okay? Not many of you, so I would encourage you, I'm only going to hit it at a very high level. Stop by before you leave, because I think you'll find that the Great Place to Work that you've known in the past has changed a little bit over the years. Okay? So one of the things Michael drove home really clear is that this is not just a conversation about culture. Culture really isn't the lead-in. This is a business conversation. And so the worst thing we can do is sort of have a bolt-on where we are talking about business, we're talking about strategy, and then, oh, by the way, we're adding on culture. It can't be a bolt-on. And so we've looked at our research, we've looked at companies, we sort of put things in 4 categories. Number one is, what happens if you have low performance and you also have a low level of trust? The relationships aren't strong. That's truly a company at risk. Very unlikely that you can sustain yourself in that scenario. Also, you can have this culture where you're driving performance and you're pushing people to get better and better and better, and you're getting results, but there's a low level of trust. What happens in those scenarios? You're probably going to have turnover. People are going to burn out. They're not going to stay for a long period of time. So neither one of those 2 scenarios are favorable for an organization. You can also have a scenario where you have a really strong relationships in your organization. People feel really good about those relationships, but you're not getting the business performance that you need to. That can create a culture of comfort. So we're not interested in really driving any of those scenarios. What we want to do is make sure that we drive performance. And so the whole idea is that we believe that trust fuels performance. And that's how we get the results we need, and that's how we bring people along the way and create a meaningful environment for them. We know that most people want to win. They want to be a part of an organization that creates meaningful relationships, and they also want to have meaningful work to do. And to us, that's what it means to be a great place to work. Okay. How many of you, I'm sure you've taken in a lot of information over the last day. I was in the innovation track most of the day, and I learned some really neat stuff. I learned about how Intuit is creating an environment where they're actually bringing people on board, making same-day decisions on candidates. They have a core of high-potential employees that are actually making decisions on candidates. So if I come in for an interview and I meet all the criteria and I have a thumbs up from that group of people who are doing the interviews, I'm hired on the spot. Likewise, if I don't fit the criteria, I know that day that I'm not going to have an opportunity to get the job. And so that's really just an innovative way that I learned that Intuit is handling onboarding. But you probably have a lot of things you're trying to sort of filter through your head. How do I apply all these things? It could look something like this. Everything looks great. You know, what do I choose? Where do I start? And so we realize that that is a challenge that organizations go through. So part of what we mean by high trust culture consulting is we have to figure out how do we focus? How do we pour our attention to the things that are most important? How many of you had aha moments? You came here yesterday with some things in mind, either through a side conversation, a conversation over lunch, or a speaker who's speaking to you, just really created this aha moment that you're going to go back and you know what to do now. Anyone experienced something like that? Okay. Excellent. It's only going to get better, so today you'll have much more opportunities to have those aha moments. So that's there. You also may have gotten here thinking that if we can fix this or we can address that, we'll be okay. How many of you have, through the conversations you've had with people and through the speakers you've heard, realize there's even more hurdles you have to overcome in order to create a great culture, okay? Some of that's there as well. So we know those things exist through the work that we do with our clients every single day. So all of those insights are really feeding into what we want to share with you about the way that we're going to approach our work going forward. It's okay. You may have come here, you wanted answers to a lot of questions. Maybe you're going to leave here with more questions than answers. And that's okay. Because really, think in terms of all the people that are here. If you look around the room, there's some amazing people that are here. They're doing some amazing work, and they represent some amazing companies. And we know that they're here to support, we're here to support each other on this journey. It's not just a great place to work company thing, but it's something that this community brings to each and every one of us. And I know this to be true because in a lot of work that we do, it's often that we reach out to a company who's on the 100 best list, and we may say, you know, we know this person, we know this company over here, they're struggling with X, Y, and Z. It seems like in your culture, that's a strength of yours. Do you mind reaching out and connecting and sharing information? And 10 times out of 10, that request is met with unbelievable excitement. So people here are willing to help each other. And don't forget that when you leave, because that resource is there. But also know that we're here and we're evolving what we do to really make a difference. We want to be a catalyst. We want to be a change leader. Okay. And so we realize that there are all sorts of challenges that you face. How many of you are experiencing this challenge where how do we get our leaders, our executives, bought into this and connected to this and fully understand it? That's a challenge, and if it doesn't start there, nothing else really works. So this could be a scenario. We're having a findings presentation. We're talking about culture. If the room looks like this, and that would probably be my laptop, the consultant, and no one else is there, we definitely have an alignment problem. So we want to move from a scenario like that to something like this. Think in terms of the whole leadership team totally being in sync, understanding the business imperative. It doesn't mean that everyone agrees, but at least we understand why this is important. We know that if we're not doing that in the work that we do, we're not being successful, and we're not supporting you the way you need to be supported. Another scenario we know, a challenge that we see is how do we move from this lack of having a clear focus? Maybe in your organization you have leaders over here who are thinking one way, others over here who think a totally different way. Maybe you have employees who are sitting back thinking that this is leadership's job to make it a great place to work, not ours. So this overall lack of clarity and lack of focus. We know that in the work that we do, we have to eliminate that fuzzy vision that you may see, and we have to create some clarity where everyone's not only knows what's important, but we're looking in the same direction and we're focusing on those things. So when we think in terms of high trust culture consulting work, those are two examples of the hurdles that we have to make sure we're helping people overcome. Okay. How do we go about doing that? We know that change is hard, and a lot of you have probably heard of John Cotter and a lot of his work, and he's kind of an expert around change methodology. And this is really his stat. He says that 7 out of 10 change initiatives fail. I'm wondering what that statistic would be for culture-related work. I would say it's probably much higher than that. And the reason I feel that way is because we're not talking about process improvement or things of that nature. We're talking about human beings. And human beings are complicated. You have behavioral change that's a part of that. You have relationships you're trying to build. So I would say that the process of going about organizational change or culture change is probably more difficult than anything else you can approach. So recognizing that, how do we consult from that landscape? You know, what is going to be our point of view that we can go out and help people drive business performance, but also create a great place to work? So that's the question we've been wrestling with. And if you go out to the lounge out there, that's what my colleagues are here to talk about, because we're excited about that. We can't live into our mission. We can't really change the world unless we're able to support people in this manner. What does it look like? We know that, Michael mentioned yesterday, there's so much data that we've collected over the years. So in order for us to have credibility and really speak to leaders, we know that we have to come from a data perspective. And so we've taken that information, and the way that we consult is based on the empirical data that we've collected over so many years. We also know that it takes more than just a focus on one part of the organization. We miss things when we only focus on talking to senior leaders or trying to have a grassroots up process. We have to look at the organization holistically, and how do we impact every single level of the organization. And then we also know that it has to be results oriented. We're beyond the period where we can go in and just lead with culture and talk about culture. I mean, it's a nice thing to do, but we have to lead with performance. We have to lead with what is your strategy, and then how do people fit into that? And then what type of culture do we need to make things work? So that's kind of our orientation to the work that we're doing going forward. You may ask, what does that look like? On the left side, you see a column. And when I mention a sort of a systems perspective, we know that if you're not addressing things on all those different levels, it's highly unlikely that you're going to build the culture that you want. So it starts with a strategic conversation. What is the business strategy? And then how do people support that? We also know that it starts at an executive perspective. And so, again, I mentioned it's not about agreement, but it's about alignment. Executives, the worst case scenarios think that we have an organization, we're trying to create a culture, we need to do something for those people over there. The orientation needs to be that I'm a part of the system that I'm trying to change. I'm a leader and I'm an employee. And so I have to see it from that perspective. How many of you went on the Scripps tour on Wednesday? Okay. Great. One of the things that Chris Van Gorder, the CEO, mentioned is that Scripps had an amazing turnaround. They went from almost not having enough cash on hand to even survive to being a thriving organization. He knew that the way that he was going to turn things around was with the leadership team, the middle managers. Why? Because they impact way more people than the senior executives. That's where the strong relationships are built. So in our interventions, we know that it has to be strategic, it has to address the executive team, it also has to impact the management team overall, and then last but not least, it has to be something that's tapping into the resources of your organization, because you have so many employees that have answers to the questions that we have. So we have to really approach it from a systems perspective. So that's what the work looks like, and that's what we're excited about. What is the journey like? We know this journey to be true based on the data we've collected for so many years. It starts with the organizational alignment and assessment. So we want to make sure that leaders understand the business imperative, they understand why it's important, they understand how it's going to drive performance, and then we have to figure out what's the cultural state like today. And we're looking at it not just from what's not working, but what is working. Where are there things or activities going on that really we can learn from those things and spread it across the organization? And then where are there opportunities that we can address that will make things even better? So it moves from the alignment to the assessment, and it goes over to really a design phase. And what we've been getting into as a Great Place to Work organization is using some design elements, design thinking, creating experiences where people can actually not only understand how to bring about change, but also experience it themselves. And then we know that from an evolution perspective, once we design that ideal culture, how do we embed it into the organization so that it sticks every single day? And that's where the behavioral change comes in. And then last but not least, sustaining what you've built. And part of what you're experiencing today helps you sustain the momentum that you build on a regular basis. So that's what we're excited about. I would encourage you to go out and visit the lounge. Whether or not you're working with us or whether or not you're trying to do it internally, we know this process to be valid. It gets results. It creates the kind of culture that you're looking for. It creates performance. It builds meaningful jobs, and it creates meaningful relationships. So we're excited that you're here. Look forward to the rest of the day. Thank you all for being a part of this